GQ Patrol Part 1 Dash Build. Tonight it's finally happening. We're finally filming my build of my GQ Patrol Centre Dash, and tonight's episode we're going to dive straight into it. In tonight's episode we are going to first do a cutout of the old dash and removing all the parts that we don't need. Then we're going to go on to strengthening the dash to make it more stronger. Lastly, we're going to do some fabricating, just getting the new plates made up for the new fascia of the dash. But you're going to have to watch and wait and see. And then in a few weeks time we'll release part 2 where we'll go into removing the old climate unit and the control panel and relocating it down the bottom. A bit of wiring for the new screen, as well as a few other accessories that I'm going to add. And we're going to also do the painting. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's get into it. So before we begin today's video, I just wanted to explain quickly what I've already done, so that you guys know if you want to do this to your own dash as well, exactly what I've done to get to this point before we continue on. First off, you've got to cut your dash, so I recommend that you buy a second-hand one and not use your nice clean one like I did. I've just cut out all the bottom stuff. It's enough around it, just so you still got something to mount to. When you make up a plate later, it will sit flushly on that, but we try to get rid of the rest of it because we don't need it. Only with the top section, we've done the same as well. So we've cut all the way around here, along down the sides, and then down here as well. And then it's made a cross bracket just to brace the dash. This is out of 90-degree aluminium, and all I've done is bolted 2 of them together like so, and then use the factory mounting holes to screw it into place. Down the bottom, I've also put a crossbar. The bolts don't line up square, that's purely because that's where they were when I found it. Just use some old scrap out the back, but that's okay, so you won't be seeing it anyway. That's just to help keep the dash sturdy since you're cutting out a lot of it. This here, I'll show you how to put that on, which I'll do later in this video. Also already made up 2 brackets for the new head unit. These ones are just made out of 1.6 steel, and I've just made like a net type drawing on a flat piece of sheet, and then just cut it out, bent it, and then mounted it and trimmed out of 90-degree aluminium, which will go around this part here and act as a trim around the head unit, which I'll show you that after as well. But that's just a bit of an insight to what I've done already, because I didn't record any of that. I do recommend that you don't use your dash out of your car, that you buy a second-hand one, purely because there's no turning back once you do this. It does ruin the dash essentially, but it is 100% worth it in my opinion. I bought that one actually from Controller Part for about 80 bucks, so can't go wrong. Now to show you the new head unit, which is this one here. This is the Pioneer DMH A245BT. So first up, we're going to mount the bracket. It's sat in that way like that. So we're just going to screw that one back in. Wrong way, it was actually meant to go that way, but anyway. One thing I did forget to mention was these 2 mounting points here. One is actually higher than the other, so I believe it's this one. This one's slightly taller than this one over here. So what I've done to rectify that is I've just got one of these square nuts, and I just sit it in the middle as a spacer, just like that. Just like that. Beautiful. So it isn't actually 100% flush, just sitting up about a mil or 2 compared to that side. So that side's flush, but easy fix. All we do, right in there, those few bolts that are sitting along there, they just undo, and then you can just adjust it, so you can just slide it a little bit back just to get it to sit nice and flush again. And have a look at that, perfectly flush. I'm happy with that. Righto, our next step is to clean up the surface, getting it prepped for the silicone. So I'm just going to go ahead and use some good old Meppo and just give it all a quick wipe down. Next step, silicone time. Just using some Armorflex black, super strong stuff apparently, off the shelf from Bunnings. It's all plastic and metal, so the black one as well. Just as for the top cap thing, when I used it last, I forgot to put a plug in it, so that kind of all went hard and that. So we're just going to wing it out of that. Break it first, just like that, locked and loaded. Righto, so we've done the nice 2 beads along there and we've plushed them out a bit, as you can see there. Look at that. So I've put a fair amount on there because I really don't want it to come off. And then yeah, just got a bit of spit on the hand and smoothed it out nicely. So next, I reckon we'll grab this big bad boy. That's all been cleaned up too now. And make sure I put it all on there. And there we'll go. Just like that. Righto, next step, now we've got that all nicely in position and square to the rest of the fascia. So we're going to clamp it down for tonight, make sure it doesn't move and pulls in nice and tight. That way by tomorrow it'll be good to go to continue on. Something else too you'll notice here is those bottom holes, they're slightly over those aluminium brackets there. Yeah, look, probably could have made them a little bit higher, but it's easy fix. I'll just ground them out tomorrow, no worries at all. So after about half an hour of mucking around trying to make it nice and neat, I've got clamps on it now, so they're on there and it's going to sit there for overnight, let it dry. Hopefully by sort of mid-morning it'll be good enough to work on again so I can continue doing a bit more. So that's pretty much it for tonight, I reckon. Might go inside and crack a beer, I reckon. Show you what I'm finished with there. So I've just got the 4 clamps on all the corners, just clamping down those points. Tomorrow what we'll do is, once this is all semi-dry, we'll silicone it from the other side as well, just to make sure. So especially along here, because you can't really silicone it here, but on the inside I can actually put a nice bead along it, and that will just give it a bit more reinforcement. Anyway, that's that for tonight. Righto, so overnight the front fascia panel has dried on now, so it's all good to go. Have a look at that. Next up we're going to do the bottom plate. So we're going to measure it out, cut it out, and then we're going to silicone it on as well. With the previous dash mock-up that I did, I already had one down there I made up, but I'm putting in a new one because it's going to be slightly different. This one here is the original one I had on here, so if you have a look at that, that sat in there nicely. This one held in a UHF, which is why I've got this big cutout here in the bottom. No longer going to have the UHF in there. Mounting the unit inside this made it very quiet and made it hard to hear, so I've actually externally mounted it under the dash now, because when I was in here it was quite muffled, so I'm no longer going to do that. The reason this cut out is because of the climate control, so that's where I put it. Obviously they used to go up here, but because I've got the big screen in there now, can't have it there, so we've relocated it down here. With this though, I want to make a new one because I've actually slightly altered where the climate control goes, so this doesn't line up exactly to where it is now. In the previous one I did, I had the climate control actually mounted to this dash fascia. I'm not doing that this time around because it was a pain in the ass every time I wanted to get the dash out. It made it really hard, you had to pull all the cables off. So this time I've actually mounted the climate control unit to the dash itself, so the structure of the dash, which I'll show you guys after. And I've just got to alter this slightly, so I thought it's easier just to make a new fresh plate and start over. So, easiest way to make up a nice new plate, use the old cutout. It fitted perfectly, so as you can see here, I've just essentially just traced it out. This time I'm using a slightly thinner plate compared to the top, just to try and keep the weight down. So this is just that gal you buy from Bunnings, does the trick. It's not holding any weight essentially, it's just more of a cover plate, so it doesn't need to be thick. So now we're up to the cutting stage, so let's get into it. Safety first. Well, not full safety, but next up I'm going to grind off all the burrs and shit like that, because they're quite sharp obviously, and then we're going to round all the edges, that way it'll fit nicely. Righto, so after a few back and forth trips, I've finally got that metal piece now to where I like. So have a look at that. It's not perfect, but you can see there, it's 99% fitment. There's probably maybe a little bit more that you could do to make it a little bit better. End of the day though, it is only a GQ patrol. So our next step is to measure out where the climate control will go through the panel. So we're going to do a bit of a cutout there. No real easy way that I know to do this except for mount the dash in the car and see where it all lines up and then go from there. So using the back of the climate control there, I've just roughly marked out where it will situate on the new plate. Obviously you can't make it too big because you're not going to probably get it 100% right, so I've actually gone in a little bit because you can always cut more off but you can't add it back. So that will get cut out, we'll put this in, probably cut a bit more and then go from there, I reckon. Righto, so now we've got that pretty much cut out so that this will sort of sit flushly in there. Our next step is to come down a bit around this AC switch. So all I've done there, it's just done by hand really. Just marked out, you probably can't see it on the camera but because I've used grey lead. I've just marked out the length, so I've just measured it with a ruler, marked down and how far out it comes. So as you can see here, see how it juts out just there? So that's sort of the area we want to take on next, as well as a bit more around that top section there, which will come out of here as well. The good news is, if you do a little bit extra or muck it up a little bit, this has a nice dash fascia sort of around it the whole way, so you won't actually see your muck ups, which is really good, because I seem to do them quite often. Sometimes the best method is to go old school, and that is using hand tools. So we're just going to use this. So basically just going to run that down to that line, I reckon. And just like that. Time to go grab the AC controller pad thing. I actually don't know what you call them. I guess you call it fascia for the climate control. I'm sure there's a probably technical name that I don't actually know. But anyway, we're going to grab that, put it in there and see how it lines up. No doubt probably have to do a bit more, so it's a bit of a back and forth process, but sometimes you got to do that just to get it right. Alrighty, we're back with the fascia. Let's see if it fits. Yeah, just as I thought, so it still needs a little bit more that way, as well as I've still got to do around that side edge. Most of the times you never get these things right, but it's worth a shot. Also, I think this whole climate control still needs to go that way slightly, as you may not be able to see there, but this edge here doesn't quite line up with this edge, so probably going to have to do a bit more, what's the word? Going to have to do a bit more filing on this side here, as well as a bit more filing there, which means I may not have to do there. So I'm going to leave that bit to last, because if I don't need to file it, I'm not going to waste my energy doing that. So we'll do this section first, as well as this section, to get this lined up, and then if it still needs it, then we can do it then. Now that we've got that all sorted, we're going to go put it back in the dash in the car and see how it lines up, and fingers crossed it works out. I really hope so. So after a bit more mucking around, we finally got that climate control fascia piece to fit in, and it's looking pretty good. So I'll give you a look now. So it's all sitting flush, all nicely flush with that other piece there, and it's all level with the rest of the dash. So I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe a little bit more can be taken out of this side just to get it to sit that little bit extra closer. As you can see, just on the top there, it's got maybe a mil or two gap, but I'm not stressed about that, so we can do that afterwards once it's all glued together and painted. It's not hard just to rub back a bit the plastic there, but for fitment wise, I think that's going to look really, really good. Our next step now is to put it all back together and make sure it's all happy being together. So we're going to put the head unit back in, the USBs in, the AC control switch and all that, as well as making sure that climate stuff's all hooked up. The fins up the top as well as the hazard lead, running that down through the dash fascia there. Put it all back together, we'll put it in the car, see how it looks. If it looks good, which I'm hoping it will, and all fits nice and snug, then we can pull it out, silicone the base on, and we might even silicone on the trims today, but we'll see how we go. So for the head unit itself, I've actually already pre-made some brackets. I've just done these right hand bolts. They just go on the back here. One will mount to the top bolt there, the other one there, and then similar that side. However, our only issue is with the USB ports coming through the bottom. Now we've got to drill a hole through here so we can have access to put the cables on the back. So that's our next step. So you're probably wondering how I actually made these plates and how I got the measurements and that. Basically all I did was I made my front plate first, then I cut it out, made it central with the screen's dimensions, put it in there, had it sit down flat like this, and then I worked out how far in these plates need to come from each edge, like so, and then also I did the depth of how far that is, and that's how I made that length there. And all I did essentially was created that into a flat plate, like a net, made this little tab around up here to get to that bolt hole there, or screw hole I should say, and then cut it out and then just bent it along down that line there. It is a bit of mucking around, but if you do it right, it works really well and it keeps that well and truly sturdy. As you can see there, you can't get it 100% right, so what I ended up doing was sort of drilling two holes together. That way it gives me a bit of adjustment, so I can adjust it if need be. As explained earlier in the video, these trim pieces. They can be a bit of a tight fit, but that's how I want them, so it sits better and flush. And just like that. That's how it sits. So that will all be glued in, not the unit of course, but the trim will be all glued around and it will sit really nice and flush there. So our next step is to drill some holes and see how far back these actually go, because you might actually have to drill the same size hole depending on how deep these are through those other brackets. As you can see there, that's the other bracket down behind there that we've now got to deal with, which is going to be a bit of fun, but that's alright. All we'll do is we'll just drill a hole through that, drill it out to the same size as this, and we're good to go again. Righto, so we're about to drill that back bracket now that was holding the head unit in place. So all I'm going to do is I've left the bracket on for now. I'm just going to drill through this way just so I can get a centre with these holes up the front here. Just because it's easier, save a bit of time, run the drill through, and then we'll take them off and we'll use the stepping drill to bore them out to the right size. So that's all for this week's episode. Next week we'll get on to finishing off all the silicone together and onto painting, and then ready for final fitment, as well as a bit of wiring to do for the USB ports. So that's all for today, and I'll leave you with that.